For with everyone, the exteriors and the interiors must make one and correspond. We see wonderful patterns presented to us in the Lord's Word. And in the word of the second coming, the teachings of the new church, the Lord has given us interior understanding, or an understanding of interior things concerning spiritual patterns. And it's not that these aren't understood by just about everyone. However, the secrets of heaven, we're told the gift to the new church is to understand and be told the secrets, secret patterns, secret ways, secret things. For many people through the years, since the writings of the new church were discovered by people in libraries or listening to somebody talk about them, people searching the Word and coming across a person who starts saying things that sound really intriguing, new understanding of ideas having to do with God. People have tried to assign the secret patterns and powers of the Word in the new church in ways to disclose more and more things to themselves so that they can be more heavenly. Of course, that's the role or the use of the Word. And in other ways, we can try to use the secrets of the second coming to give us maybe magical power, to give us a sort of a leg up on other people. Not a good use of the teachings of the Word. There is an innate desire in us from our proprium, from our native self, the not good self, from the one that wants to be king of the world, queen of heaven, whatever, that wants to take any teachings, anything especially about interior teachings, and use it to our own advantage. We spoke today in the children's talk about surprises. You're in for a big surprise if that's what you're trying to do in using anything of the Word or secret knowledge to get an advantage over other people in some kind of a dominion or dominating way. It simply will backfire. And we will find ourselves more likely to be slaves to conditions that we don't like because we're bonded with these ideas of wanting power rather than being freed to advance in the life of heaven as one of the servants of the Lord's kingdom and not feeling like we're a slave to our own evil desires. The teaching of the prodigal son reminds us of the way we, each one of us, can advance, and we will go through a pattern in our advancement or our descent into the things that are of ourselves or of our propriums. Nobody really likes to talk about going to hell, but, the Lord gifts us with a whole book about heaven and hell so that we don't have to go there in our actions, in our thoughts, but we can read about it and go there with the Lord in His second coming, in the teachings that He's given us. And we all should. We all should explore the teachings the Lord has given us about hell. Because although the way the Word is written, it seems to always be addressing them, those evil spirits, of course it's addressing us. The Lord isn't giving us a book about other people so we can help take care of those evil people over there. When it's talking about evil people, it's talking about us. The Lord's writing His Word to you, to me, so that we can see where and when and how, what patterns it is that we enter into that would be evil. And of course, none of us want to show forth our evils blatantly, but the Lord can see that, and there's no place that you can hide. Mentioning with the little children, you can't play hide and seek with your spiritual mom or dad in the other world. They can see. They know your loves. They have the love for you. You can't hide from them. Do you think we can do it as adults any better from the Lord, our Heavenly Father? We can't hide. The section we're going to be studying in the next few weeks related to heaven and hell brings us to a pattern that is mentioned in the Word. And I refer to the sermon as the 3 states you meet in heaven. I'll play on the title, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. You might have heard the book. Well, there aren't 5 people you meet in heaven. It's a great book, if you've ever read it, or a movie. But there are definitely 3 states you will meet in heaven if you're going to heaven. If you're not going to heaven, you don't have to count that far up. There'll just be 2 states. But if you're going to heaven, there are 3 states you're going to meet. There's a pattern that will involve you coming into heaven. The last passage read from heaven and hell talks about how long you're in this first state, which is the state of exteriors. It's simply to help get you used to the fact that you need to match up what's going on really inside and really outside, your interiors and your exteriors. It's time for us to stop playing hide and seek with our life, acting as if there's a really important part inside that's hiding away and nobody can see it. And so it talks about people who have been in evils, and that's all of us, who have been in evils, who look at their lives and say, I've lived under governments, I've lived as a civil person, I've acquired some wealth, I've acquired a good reputation. I'm okay. See, look at my life. It's all right. I have a reputation for justice and honor, it says. I've gained favor. I've been raised to positions of responsibility. We all know, because we've been exposed to the teachings of the Word, that it's just a show. And some of us are really better than others at being good at the show, presenting well. Well, it's not really true that the dress makes the man, the clothing makes the man. It's not really true that if you have your whole life kept a really clean house, that you'll go to heaven. It's really true that if all your friends have always said nice things about you, you're more likely to go to heaven than the person that they gossip about. If they're your friends, they probably gossip about you when you're not there. It's not really true that all the external appearances that you put together mean that you're going and you're more likely to be in heaven than the person who doesn't look so good on the outside. And that brings us to the story about the prodigal son. There were 2 sons. One, the older one, not read about in the lesson, he always looked good. And the younger one looked like he's making a mess out of his life. And in fact, he did make a mess out of his life, and he followed a very classic pattern. I'm a big boy now, give me everything I want, and I'm going to go away and prove to the world how important I am. So the young boy took his livelihood from his father, his inheritance, squandered it, living a riotous life. And then there became a famine in the land, and he was hungry. Eventually, whether in this world or the next, eventually, as we live our lives looking good, dressing well, displaying our wealth, either externally or our wealth of knowledge, our wealth of business acumen, our wealth of cleaning techniques, whatever it is, that wealth is going to disappear on us. In the other world, all the external things that we think are so important, all those things of show will disappear, and we will then have a famine. There'll be something that'll hit us, and we realize, I'm really spiritually hungry, because all this external stuff isn't where it's at. In the pattern of the prodigal son, it says there was a famine in the land, he became hungry, so he attached himself to a citizen of that country, and he went out into his fields and fed his swine. And if you know about the teachings concerning a good Jewish boy or girl, they wouldn't be playing with pigs. Completely not acceptable. Swine, no. They don't eat swine. They don't have anything to do with swine. So he was hitting a low that would completely remove all of his sense of self-dignity. He's not just feeding cows. This is okay. He's not feeding camels. He's feeding swine, which the Jews were not to have any business being around, eating, touching, feeding, whatever. Just wasn't to be done. We, each one of us, as we approach our spiritual end, our goal, or our death, want to recognize what is it that we have done that has so totally gone against our own values that we find ourselves disgusted with ourselves. And the Lord, as we do our spiritual work, will bring us to states where we recognize that if left to ourselves, that we would be in the fields feeding the pigs, if left to ourselves. And in the natural world, we can become very good at protecting ourselves from doing all kinds of wrong things, because what would so-and-so think? Or I'll get in trouble, I'll get caught. The law of the spiritual world is that the ways appear, paths are seen, and people start following them, and they have no sense of the fear of the loss of their reputation. That external thing begins to melt away, and they follow that path. And we're given the teachings about that pattern so we can also look at ourselves and look at the people in our lives and say, what pattern would I follow? Where would I go if nobody knew and I wasn't going to get caught and I had no fear for my reputation, my honor, my wealth, my life? Where would I go? What would I do? And it can become an elaborate, twisting path because it has to do with the people in our past and what we've learned, the patterns that have been created in our past, especially in our family of origin, especially with our siblings and our parents, especially with things that have caused us deep-seated fears where we've learned not to trust in others and therefore not to trust in the Lord, but to trust in ourselves and to protect ourselves and not turn over our lives to the Lord. It's hard to break that pattern, but very often an easy thing for us to look for the pattern or the path of least resistance and go into that kind of a mode of operating. And we're kind of hiding from truly coming into a position of trusting the Lord. The prodigal son, feeding swine, hungry himself, said he came to himself. Came to himself. He had broken the value system that he had innately within him from his upbringing. He had done things that no good Jewish boy should do, would be caught dead doing. But he's in a foreign land, so probably no other people that he knows saw him. But he came to himself. He came to his values that the Lord always implants within us. The Lord always gives you something that can bring you back out of the lowest point in your life and the next lowest point in your life. And the pattern that we will follow by the Lord helping us see each of these lows, each of the nature of ourselves that we need to visit and then come up from. He came to himself and said to himself, and listen carefully to what he said to himself. He said, I will go to my father. And this is all just a thought he's having as he's feeding the pigs and probably eating some of the slop. I will go to my father. I will say to my father, Father, I've sinned against heaven and I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. That's just a thought he has. He's just reflecting. He's in meditation. Maybe not so much meditation as we might want to think about it. He's desperate, and he's crying out for help, and that's the thought that occurs to him because he came to himself. He came to the self he has as the son of the Father. That's the self that he came to. What is it to be my Father's son? I've sinned against heaven, I've sinned against him, but even my Father's servants do better than this. I don't want to be living like this. I'd rather live like a servant in my Father's house. than continue living like this. So there's a little bit of a self-preservation motive going on, but there's also the recognition that this is not my life. This is not what my life should be like. Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. This is part of a pattern that we must enter into in our own spiritual journey. To recognize whether we've ever actually been out feeding swine, what does that correspond to? What have we done that has been so against our own values, so not the person we want to be, that we look at it and we say, I'd rather leave this and do anything else than stay in this pattern of evil. I will return to my Father. And of course, the Lord, in telling this story, as you may know, he was looking at two different people. The proud people, the proud Jews, who say, I've done everything. I've done everything right. I'm great. I'm going to do wonderful things in heaven. I'm a great person. And Jesus is listening to them, pharisaical thinking. I've done everything right. I've kept the law. I'm good. Compared to the sinners that he was eating with, who they said, if he knew the nature of the people he was eating with. The pattern was the juxtaposition of those self-righteous people who represent the older son, and those who have become lost, and the Lord came to seek and to save those who were lost. So he tells this story, but it's the story of all of that within us. That self-righteousness within our own minds, thinking, hey, we have these teachings of the church. Hey, the Lord loves us. Hey, we look really good. No problems here. And that part of us that actually, when we look at it, say, I've got some more spiritual work to do. There's some aspect of me that would be or is in the fields feeding swine. And of course, the lovely part of this, well, there's many lovely parts to this story, the wisdom with which the Lord told it. So he gets up, the son, he repents, he returns, he turns against what he had been doing because he'd come to himself. He came within himself and he woke up to what was happening. In some terminology, you'd say he hit bottom. He hit bottom and realized, I need help. I will go to my father. So he actually does go to his father. And as many times as this story can be told, for many people, each telling reminds them again and refreshes in their memory the Lord's own forgiveness to them. While he was yet a far way off, his father saw him. Can't play hide and seek in heaven, or the world of spirits, or actually even in hell. Wise angels, the Lord always, and the people who genuinely love you will see you. You can't keep secrets, not for any real length of time, and of course there is no time in the other world. But you can't maintain a facade or a secret life in the other world. The Lord always sees you. The people who love you the most seek you out and see you. You can't hide. The Father sees the Son afar off because the Father, the love of the divine for our salvation, never sleeps. Like a mother's love, it never gives up. It never goes to sleep when there's a crying child. It never, well, we might sleep as mothers, of course, but that love never does. And that love is a divine love. It's a gift from the Lord. Be a good parent, mother or father. It never gives up. It always hopes. It always reaches out. It always looks. It always scans for the best thing for us. And so this lost son, while he was yet a far way off, his father saw him. And the father ran to embrace the son, fell on his neck, kissed him, and wept. And then said to the servants, "Do these things that show this is my son. Bring a robe, put it on him. Bring a ring that identifies him as my child, like a wedding ring identifies you as a husband or wife to your partner. A ring recognizing you as a member of this heavenly household in this parable. And put shoes on his feet. All the evil and all the bad things that you have done, the Lord will wash your feet and put shoes on your feet. Because the Lord's not staring down at the dirty muck that you've gone through. He's not interested. He's just happy you've returned to him. Run to meet the Son." So there's a pattern going on that we have to enter into. And it's repeated in the spiritual world. It's talked about in this section about in heaven and hell. And the first pattern is what we're focusing on, although there are three patterns, three states that we must go through. But that one of the externals, where we must, time after time after time, come to ourselves. We will do that in the other world, but we're given the gift of being able to do that examination and do it now. Later on in this section, it talks about how some people who've learned these things and applied them to their life pass right through these three stages almost instantly and are in their heavenly home. Do the work now so you don't have to do the work later. And that's what our choices on earth are about. To do now, not to put off. It will catch up with us. There won't be any secret that won't be disclosed. So do the work now. Do the pattern that has to do with seeing and recognizing the evils that are with us. Maybe not hitting a bottom that you could hit, but if you stay with the evil, eventually we'll hit that bottom. But make the recognition that if I return to the Lord will want me back. Have no fear that the Lord, as he sees you coming, is going to say, close all the gates, keep that one out. That you're that bad. And sometimes we live with this sense, well, there's trouble in my life, and the Lord, I've been trying to follow the Lord for all these years. I must be a spiritual loser. No, the Lord doesn't want me. I've told him over and over again that I'm going to be good, and I'm going to try to follow his word. And the Lord never shuts the gate on us. The Lord's waiting to give us a new robe, a new ring, and new shoes. The Lord's waiting for us to fulfill that pattern. And the first part of it, mentioned by the externals of the spiritual world, is to become one between what's going on within us and what's going on outside of us. To try to live with as much integrity as possible, to live without secrets about what's going on inside and what we're going to be doing outside. To not live under any illusion that if we look good, somehow that's to our spiritual advantage. It actually can be to our spiritual disadvantage because we might not actually take the time, since we look so good, no problems here, to do the spiritual work that we need to. May we all be as one of those servants. Make me like one of your servants, the Son said. May we be a servant to the interior things the Lord's given us and the exteriors to serve those interiors. That is truly a prayer as well as a confession, as well as a request on the part of the child of the story of the prodigal son. May we become, Lord, make me, please, take me and make me like one of your servants. For as it says in the Psalms, the Lord's word that we would rather be a servant in the house of our God. Let us indeed pray for that. Amen.